Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock. First of all, we're going to have roll call and then an introduction of the staff, and any public, other people who want to introduce themselves is fine. You don't have to, but we'd like to know who else is there if you want to let us know. So could you read off the roster, please, and we can do the roll call.
Yeah. So roll call for, let's see, today's meeting, AAC meeting, Suzanne Tejada. Barbara Silver.
Here. Suzanne Tejada's here.
Suzanne Tejada here, Barbara Silver here. Janice Rodriguez.
Here.
Nick Kuhn. Nick is not here. Sean Burrell.
Here.
Robert Burnham.
Here.
And Chair Morrison.
Here.
Council Member Megan Harmon.
Morning, everyone. I'm here. Nice
Hello.
to hear you all.
Thank you. For city staff, we have Brian Damore.
Here.
Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sarita King. And Adriana Morales. That is I. As of right now, we do not have any attendees.
Okay, thank you. Next item is committee member reports and staff announcements. I first want to thank Sarita for getting out a new email today with the link. Sometimes in some groups, you get the link a week ahead of time, and then it's kind of hard to find when it's time for the meeting. So it's nice to have it there on the same day. So thank you for that. At the last meeting, I got overwhelmed with too many papers open on my screen, and I know I forgot a few of the public comments, asking for public comments. So I'm going to ask Adriana to remind me after each item we should have a public comment. So I want to get this a little bit more organized. So we'll first have a presentation, then questions from the members, then we're going to ask for public comments, and then we'll have a discussion with the members. So I'm going to try to keep it in that order. Instead of interrupting the presentation, we'll try to wait till the end and then have questions, public comments, and then a discussion. So we had one ad hoc committee that wasn't listed on the agenda, so I'm going to talk about it now, and that was the GoToWebinar subcommittee, and that was Barbara Silver and Bob Burnham and myself. Now, as you noticed on the agenda, they said that the Windows shortcuts have been done by the company. We were promised that everything would be done by the end of October, otherwise they'd cancel the contract. So we have a little problem here because the Windows was done, but the Apples and the Macs were not done because of some medical emergency. So I don't think that there's any sense to go ahead and cancel anything, but I want to bring it to the attention that what we were told was going to happen did not happen with the company who does GoToWebinar, which we know is not really accessible. Now, Bob, did you have any information from your talk with Matt 4 about that, the screen reader problem?
I left a message. Have not heard back yet, so I need to follow up with that next week.
Oh, okay. So that's all the report, I guess, on the GoToWebinar improvements. A quick
Jim,
question.
I did want to let you know real quickly that I was unable to get on with my iPod.
Okay.
I was able to join the meeting, but somehow the screen functions did not allow me to find the mute or the mute unmute button to actually unmute myself. So I'm on the phone call just for the record, and it is a long distance call, and so we need to resolve that issue for future meetings.
That's very disturbing. We had asked for quite a while now to get a local phone number the county itself, they have a program where if you don't have any access, you can just call in on a local phone number and join the meeting. And somehow the city can't figure out how to do that. So Bob is paying for a long distance phone call because of this program. So we really need to get this thing fixed.
Yeah, so I'm going to mention it before we
Okay.
came off, just continue with that item.
Thank you, Bob. And the other thing is, I see that Sean has not re-upped, and he had volunteered for the emergency preparation group with Bob. Sean, do you want to continue doing that on your own, working with the emergency preparation people?
Yeah, I don't. I just don't have too much bandwidth right now. I started a full-time job, so I just haven't had the time to really allocate for any of these committees or stuff. So
Okay.
probably not. I don't know. I'm not really helping that much, I guess, what I'm trying to say. So
Okay. I was told there's only going to be 2 calls, but I tell you what, why don't you do it if you want to, and at the next meeting, we'll see if someone else wants to also join from the committee. Because as a non-committee member, you're free to work with the emergency preparation on your own. So thank you for your time and service, and I hope you're enjoying your new job.
thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Now it's time for public comments. Anyone can speak on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
I have a comment before we move to the public comment. Sean Gorel just joined the committee this past year. Why is his term up already? Why would he be a non-committee member?
That's a weird thing that happens here, but he replaced someone else. And the way the city works it is the term is only up, the term is based on whoever left. So he didn't start a brand new term. He took someone else's over with.
I feel like that should be made more clear in the application process. The same thing happened to me. And you think you're applying and joining for a full term, and then you find out only afterward that you're not, that it's some partial term, a year or what have you. So could that maybe be something that's added very specifically when there's openings, that you note what their length of time left is?
I agree with you fully. I talked to people about this, including Brian. I think it is mentioned at one place when you get the appointment, but it is confusing. And what I don't like now is we have, I think, four to six people are expiring on the same year. So they do this to try to keep it balanced with every year there's new members, but it doesn't work out that way. And Brian, maybe you could deal with that real quickly. We've asked if you could see why we have this log jam on this year. Any thoughts on that,
Yes,
or what can you do?
Chair Marston, you described that as I understand it, that if there is a vacancy because somebody leaves their position early before the term is up, somebody gets installed and they fill the remainder of that. But I would definitely agree, just from somebody who's trying to manage the roster, that it can get confusing as far as whose term is up when, and that's something that I can talk to the clerk about, because I'm sure it's not just this committee that deals with that. So a little bit more clarity on that would be helpful for the committee members and for staff.
Thank you. It would be good to remember that there's a bunch of people expiring now in 3 years, and it's not evenly spread out over the 3-year period. So, and Sean, I hope that you weren't that you were aware of this.
No, I wasn't.
Okay, because Brian mentioned it at the last meeting that your term was expiring.
I just thought it was an error, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry for that. I hope we can apply again in the future, because I thought you were very important for the committee. I just thought you weren't, you were too busy, but I'm sorry you didn't understand that, because it was mentioned, but
So
sorry about that.
Is Nick Kuntz's gonna expire as well?
He's the only one who's on he's got 2 more years.
So he applied at the same time I applied, so I don't
Yes.
understand why he gets the one that doesn't have to reapply and I have the one that expires. That's the unclear part to me.
Okay, well, see, he applied for a certain position as a public member, and that one had an opening for 3 years. You applied, I think, as a disabled member. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't understand the difference, and I don't really,
Okay.
I don't
Well,
really care.
the person who had the disabled membership left early, and so that was open for a shorter term. Okay. Whereas the one that Nick applied for was a full term. So one was a disabled membership and one was a public member. So the city keeps those separately. And that's why, even though you both applied at the same time, he had a full term. But I know it's confusing and I don't like it myself.
This
And I'm
is
sorry.
Barbara, and the reason it's confusing is because it isn't distinguished when you apply. Because I asked, how do we know which one we've been appointed to? They said, you'll find out. So that was not really very satisfying. And I think that this whole procedure can be definitely improved, and that should be something on the agenda for next time.
That sounds good. And Sean, again, I'm sorry that has happened. Brian, can you make a point to really delve into this, because it's not very clear to people, and to lose a member because they didn't realize their term was expiring is a bad thing, and we don't like that. So
This is Barbara. It's not that it's not clear, it's completely confusing.
it's clear and confusing.
Well, it's clear after the fact. It's not
Yes.
clear either in advance or at the time. After
Okay.
the fact is a little late.
Okay. Well, again, I'm sorry this happened, and I hope that Brian can get to the bottom of this and make sure that it is spelled out easily and you know which position you have. And I can see Sean's confusion where Nick was taking a public membership position that was open for 3 years, and Sean was given a disabled membership, which was only 1 year. So anyway, Brian, it is a confusing thing, and we've lost a member because of that. So I hope we can get to that next time. Any other comments on that? Okay, are there any other public comments then on the agenda from outside sources? Okay, if there's no more public comments, we'll get to the minutes.
Marston, I do not see any public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Suzanne, do you know that you're on the screen and we can all see you?
Oh, I can turn myself off.
Yeah, you probably want to.
I want
do.
her on there.
Let's see, I'm going to stop my webcam. Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Oh, just another, I just wanted to add, my term also expires and I've reapplied and I still have yet to go to the city council to do the interview. So, but that's going to happen next week or the week after.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're going to reapply.
And
Yes.
Jim, I already interviewed last Tuesday, Tuesday the 27th,
Okay.
so a week ago Tuesday. Felt they had a good interview, so I'm confident, unless there's a bunch of new blood that comes in that would be nice. I applied for another term.
Okay, good. Okay, we're going to go to the minutes now. I wanted to thank Sarita for getting these minutes out in a timely fashion. And are there any changes to the minutes that anyone has? Okay, if not, there was one error.
There
Yeah,
was,
go ahead.
okay. I think you're about to address that, so I'll
Right.
let you.
It was mentioned in the minutes that there was a subcommittee or ad hoc committee to work on the GoToWebinar program, but the members weren't listed and therefore it was not put under the title of ad hoc committee reports later. So that's why I did that report during member comments. So that was the webinar ad hoc committee was Barbara Silver, Bob Burnham, and myself. So we need to put that in the minutes as far as who was on that committee. Is that enough, Brian?
Yes, I think that works. The motion would be to approve the minutes with the addition of listing Barbara Silver, Jim Marston, and Bob Burnham as the appointed committee members for the GoToWebinar platform.
Okay.
Correct. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Well, I need to have a motion first.
Oh, move
Okay.
that the minutes be approved with the addition of the GoToWebinar subcommittee people named as subcommittee members to be added into the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Seconded by Barbara.
Thank you. Let's have a roll call vote then to approve the minutes.
Okay, this is a roll call to approve the minutes. Susan Tejada,
Approved.
Barbara Silver,
Aye.
Janice Rodriguez,
Aye.
Nick Kuhn, Sean Corral,
Aye.
Robert Burnham,
Aye.
and Chair Marston.
Aye. Okay. The next is going to be a presentation on State Street and the parklets.
Yes. So thank you, Chair Marston. Brian Demore, Acting Public Works Director. And this has kind of become a standing item, I think, since COVID. And I want to introduce to you Jason Harris, the city's Economic Development Manager. He's on this call and has a limited amount of time available, which is why we jumped this item. It's a little bit out of order from our normal agenda to have a presentation here before the ADA coordinator report and before the ad hoc committee reports. So I'll just give kind of a brief overview on what's happening out there now. And then Jason is available and can talk a little bit if you all have questions about kind of the future of State Street. So two very separate things. And I'll jump right in now with what's happening today out there on State Street. So as you know, we've got a much different looking State Street than it was back in March. We've got the parklets and outdoor dining and other kind of business activity happening out in the public right of way. And it's been evolving. It continues to evolve. We've worked closely. We created a subcommittee of the Access Advisory Committee to help staff work through some of the issues associated with what's been happening out on State Street. And most recently, I think just prior to the last meeting, we revised the guidelines, and that's been posted online. That's been helpful. And then what we did, we took those guidelines and created a kind of like an inspection checklist that staff are now going from business to business and looking at what they've got out there in the right of way and making sure that it conforms to the guidelines. And if they're finding things that are not in conformance with the guidelines, then there's a follow-up with that business owner to get them in compliance. And it's, kind of like a tiered enforcement mechanism that we have that we can go down if there isn't compliance taking place. But generally, continues to get better. We had a walk with two of the members of that subcommittee. It was Jim Marston and Susan Tejada. Last month we were out there and we observed still there's a few things that need improvements, and we're working with the businesses on that. But I would say that everything continues to trend in the right direction from an accessibility standpoint, as soon as we're noticing things, we're getting out there and, you know, trying to catch it before it even gets constructed. So I think we're looking pretty good. I know there's a lot of concern about drainage, which isn't as much of an accessibility issue, but we'll keep an eye on that with rain forecasted this weekend, and hopefully things will work out well in that regard. So I think that's kind of it with what's happening out there today. I don't know. I think I'd like to focus more now that we have Jason here and his time is limited. I'd like to kind of transition over to focusing on the future of State Street. And I know some committee members have been kind of plugged into what's happening outside of this committee. Jason and other city staff have been going around. I guess probably best for me to turn it over to Mr. Harris and just let him describe what he's been up to. And I know this committee is probably interested in understanding how they can be involved. So with that, Jason Harris, do you want to just kind of give a brief overview for the Access Advisory Committee on the future of State Street?
Certainly. Thank you, Brian, and good morning, everyone. And first off, let me thank the chair and committee members for your time and service to the city, as well as your advisement and support and assistance in reviewing the guidelines and evaluating the parklet outdoor dining conditions. So your expertise and involvement is extremely helpful. So thank you for taking the time and effort in that regard. So to follow up to Brian's remarks, and recognizing your agenda is full, I'll really kind of speak to the current now, and then I'm available to kind of give background to where the city has been in collective effort. So as you all know, the city closed State Street as part of an emergency economic recovery ordinance, both to facilitate outdoor business activities as well as have safe social distancing for the pedestrians in the downtown commercial district of downtown State Street. Due to the success as well as ongoing pandemic and restrictions, public health restrictions, the council formed a State Street subcommittee comprised of 3 council members to evaluate and provide the direction and advisement to staff as we progress through evaluating what is the future of State Street. As you all may be aware, there's been conversations and discussions for many years in Santa Barbara in relation to the potential closure of State Street, and due to the pandemic, that concept was realized with a certain degree of success. And so we're now in that process of making that evaluation. Staff has been facilitating these focus group conversations with a number of stakeholder organizations and concurrently establishing a public resident survey that is in the process of being finalized and will be issued here in the coming weeks. And we're going to be gathering all of this collective feedback through those 2 efforts and taking that information and establishing kind of groupings of themes, because I would put this in the context of thematic input as opposed to what you may have seen or participated in. The AIA conducted a survey over the summer, which was really a binary kind of questionnaire of, should State Street be closed? Should we have bikes? Yes and no. This is a broader questionnaire of, what does the future of State Street look like? What are your experiences in a future State Street condition? Really to gather that more experiential perspective of how does the street look and what's the feel and experience into the future. One of the broad commentaries is, in any condition into the future, it will have full accessibility. So that's a baseline requirement and condition. And when we get to the stage of having an actual project being defined, obviously there's a series of steps, milestones to go through. First, of establishing a vision statement, which will be the culmination of this outreach input process, the adoption of a vision statement by council, and then ultimately a series of policy decisions of, closure of State Street and then the uses of the street, that would all culminate into a definition of a project. And then in traditional fashion, the definition of a project, obviously the project designers will be working closely with this committee to refine project concept details of accessibility and design elements. At this stage, this is just thematic visioning that we're in. And so really to answer the question of participation input, we will be having the survey, and we look to get that to the committee members, and then ask also for committee members to help distribute the survey. It's going to be both in electronic form. We'll obviously create a dedicated website on the city website page where you can take the survey. We'll also create hard copies, we'll translate it into Spanish, and we're looking to get this distributed widely throughout the community. And so we'll ask all of our stakeholders throughout the community to help inform residents and inform the constituencies that the various groups have those relationships to help inform the community collectively of this survey. We're looking to collect that, and again, as I referenced, they'll be rolling out later this month and open throughout the holidays, looking to close it down by the end of the calendar year, and then kind of do the analysis and presentation to this State Street Subcommittee, and then ultimately on to council. So with that, it's a high level overview. I just wanted to be respectful of the time and agenda, and also thank the committee again for positioning this item. I unfortunately had a 10 o'clock that I could not avoid. So thank you for making the accommodation to have me on the agenda today and have the opportunity to speak to you all. And with that, I'll open it for any questions that the committee may have.
This is Suzanne Tejada. I just wanted to tack onto that. I was in the AIA did a design charrette for idea generation of future of State Street, and I was involved in that. And a lot of those ideas are on display on State Street. I don't know, has anybody been down there to check it out?
I have. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's right at the corner as you're referencing 831 and 900 State Street.
Exactly.
Opposing buildings right there on the corner. And I think thank you for highlighting, Mr. Chair and committee member Tejada, for highlighting that, because I think that's a really informative exercise. Actually, just to tack onto that, both encourage all committee members, but then the public at large to go view those in due course. As I understand, committee member Tejada, you could probably clarify if I misstate. I believe the AIA Santa Barbara chapter will ultimately be creating on kind of an online document, kind of booklet that will have all of this material. And then similarly, the State Street Subcommittee is meeting on Monday at 11 a.m. And we're having AIA present the State Street corridor portion of their presentation or of their effort to the State Street Subcommittee, and then we're evaluating when to fit in a State Street AIA presentation to the full council. So that's kind of in the works. So just to kind of tag on to that reference point, and it's been really exciting exercise to see all the creative design concepts that are envisioned for both downtown as well as the downtown State Street corridor. So thank you for that addition.
Well, thank you for confirming that the AIA is definitely interested in being part of the conversation about what's the future of State Street is going to be. So thank you.
Suzanne, this is Jim. I did watch the entire AIA presentation, and I was very impressed with all the work that was done. It was very professional and a lot of exciting ideas. So, and I noticed your name on there too.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And just to make sure that you understand, these window displays are across from Marshall's and then kitty corner from Marshall's on those two corners. For me, I'm visually impaired. I couldn't read the stuff.
It's 833 State, one corner, and the other corner is 901 State.
Right. I think that was the old
Old Wendy Foster and the old
Wendy Foster. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I couldn't think of Wendy's name. I have two comments that I know in the future will be settled, but like many people, I don't drive. I live downtown, so I am downtown every day. When we talk about putting a bunch of new apartments downtown, the theory is, oh, we're going to get people who don't need parking and who are going to not have cars. We won't have a problem with the parking, which is the big problem right now. So, but what happened here with this new State Street opening was they canceled the shuttle. So, and I'm down there every day, and I go to the beach, and now it's a mile walk. Not terrible, but it's not close to walk the mile. I know many older people who live in the area who can't go down to the beach anymore because there's no shuttle. There's many people with disabilities. That's too far of a walk for them. I know that the new plans for AIA show shuttles usually going up Chapala and down Anacapa. But right now, this whole dining experience on State Street blocks off any way for people to get downtown or to the beach. And I also know I follow the tourist trade a lot. These people who come in from out of town who haven't been here before, they get a hotel on the beach. They have no idea what's on State Street. It used to be you'd take the shuttle up and down, you'd see what's there and plan your evening out or your movies or whatever. And now you're expecting people in a new town to walk through the underpass and walk a mile up State Street just to see what's here in the first place. So I think it's a very bad thing for the tourist trade and for the locals who live here. There's not an easy access from the beach to downtown. So I hope, Brian, that you can try to get some kind of transportation done. And now with the 500 block being closed for bicycles, you don't even have an easy bicycle route to go downtown and back and forth. And we have all these new bikes that are going to be on State Street, but we forget that there's going to be grandparents and grandkids who you're not going to get on a bike maybe with your 6-year-old grandkid and your 80-year-old grandfather. And since there's no shuttle, I think it's really a problem just thinking that we could all ride bikes. And I want to bring up something for the blind community. Please, Jason, make sure that there is clear and open paths of travel up and down your new design State Street. Some of the stuff I saw on the AIA presentation were great, but they had a lot of blockage in the way, trees and sitting areas and stuff, which is beautiful and stuff. But there has to be something that says, here's a safe, direct route up and down the sidewalk. So those are my comments. I am worried about all the new buildings on top of other buildings and how the building official is going to be able to make sure they're safe. We can't just put a bunch of bars on top of the stuff. And I guess my closing statement is I'm afraid that we might be turning into another Bourbon Street if all we have is bars and State Street is just kind of a party place to go to. I'd hate to see it just be a Bourbon Street. So nothing against partying, but we can't have the whole thing being that. If there's no retail, it's just going to be drinkers. So anyway, I'll shut up. Thank you. Are there other comments on the downtown? Yeah.
Jim, if I could add to that, I'm hoping that the city meets with MTD to figure out now and not sometime in the future to incorporate this shuttle service up Chapala and down Anacapa. And I don't know about a waterfront shuttle along the boulevard, which is separate from the State Street shuttle. But I don't understand. I know MTD has cut back not charging fares. I saw an email from Hillary Blackerby, the marketing director at MTD, possibly the reopening of the transit center for the public and the installation of requiring fares on buses. And I'm hoping that with that comes a working out with the city and MTD to reincorporate the State Street shuttle on the route that was mentioned. Even though State Street is, I don't see why with bicycles and everything else why they couldn't run a shuttle up and down State Street. But if that's too cumbersome, I think the Chapala Anacapa route is a plan B, and I'm hoping that the city is open to meeting with MTD to work that out.
Thank you, Bob. And I highly hope, Brian, that you can do something about this. I was in Denver recently, and they have a promenade that closed everything except one big bus goes up and down the street. I think it'd be great to have a shuttle going down State Street. That way tourists can see what is there and get off and partake. If you're on Chapala and Anacapa, you don't really see much of what's on State Street. So you have to have a prior knowledge of what's in the area. And I think since the electric shuttles are so small, that it wouldn't be bad just to have them be able to go, because we have to keep the lane open for fire trucks, so there is going to be room. But please, Brian, see if you can at least get MTD to start doing something, because we're blocking off access to a lot of people who live in this town and all of a sudden can't get to where they used to go. And so I hope you can, Brian, can you get something back to us soon on MTD and what their plans are for some kind of shuttle?
Yeah, that's something that we can look into and
Okay,
report back.
thank you. Any other questions for Jason? Well, then I want to thank you from the chair for coming to us, and I hope we can be part of your stakeholder group in the future.
Yes, thank you.
Most definitely. No, I look forward to coming back and giving periodic updates, and then just to respond to the chair's comments and the committee members that have spoken. Your feedback has been stated by others. So the idea of addressing public transportation / shuttle system in some manner, as we saw in the AIA, they proposed, as you all are referencing, an Anacapa Chapala, of which then that circulates through the side streets, is one option. There has been concepts floated of a kind of a smaller kind of electric type of shuttle that could just go up and down the fire lane type of approach along State Street. We've heard even some interesting creative ideas of pedicab that are accessible for patrons, that could potentially even have bike racks to facilitate. Because as we all know, State Street does have a subtle but significant over its length, grade, elevation, and so it's much easier to walk down State Street than work your way up State Street especially from
you got that.
And so the idea that there be a one-way shuttle up the street and then it circulates in a different way, picking up folks. So I think it's some combination, either MTD or maybe even a new operator in turn. I would acknowledge that we're kind of still transitioning from temporary to interim and going through visioning. So I think right now we're just identifying the needs and then the thoughts and recommendations, and then as we gather that all up, we'll obviously look to pursue for implementation. So I much greatly appreciate the collective thoughts and inputs, and I look forward to coming back in the future for giving updates throughout the process. So thank you for making time and being able to meet you all, at least virtually and over the airwaves. So thank you again for your service.
Jason, this is Barbara. Before you take off, I would like to make a suggestion that we have a couple pie charts that tell us what is the demographic makeup of the town and the surrounding area, so that seniors, like those grandparents and grandchildren, get factored in someplace. Because while you say the grade is subtle going up and down, if you watch teenagers going down the street on their bicycles during this period, it's not so subtle at all. People really pick up speed. So I'd like to see something that shows a representation of the actual population that you would like to be bringing downtown, because certainly the disabled have been, if not discounted, not considered. And the same for seniors as well, and small children also, and tourists who just really don't know what's going on. So some visual representation of those who've been left out of the conversation. Thank you.
Certainly. Well, I just to respond to that is the demographics, I would say, is going to be the city demographics, because we want all of the city to enjoy and come downtown. And and we look to make a space that's accommodating and diverse in its activities to facilitate the interest of all. So I thank you for raising that statement, and that is an overarching comment that we've heard from everyone, which is, you know, the downtown State Street corridor needs to be a space for everyone, all age
Yes,
groups, all
yes.
incomes. Mhm.
And I would say beyond the city proper. I live within the city limits, but I do things with people who live in Goleta and live in Montecito, which would be not the city proper, but actually the demographics of who you want to have downtown.
Understood.
Thank you, Barbara. And that brings up one more pet peeve I have to mention. Many of the benches have been removed, and I understand why, but it's not fair for the elderly, for little kids. You can't even get an ice cream cone and sit down to eat it. You have to walk and eat an ice cream cone, which is tricky. And sometimes you get tired, or grandma wants to sit down, or the kids are restless. And it's really a shame that somehow we have allowed most of the benches to be removed. And so it's not a welcoming place anymore for many people who aren't fully active. And that to me is a big oversight, and it seems like a disgrace that all of a sudden people who are elderly aren't really allowed to come downtown because they can't rest. And nowadays you have to pay money to go to a restaurant to sit down, which is not fair. So I hope we can work on that item and maybe bring back the benches. Thank you very much for your time.
Certainly. Thank you all.
Okay, Brian, since you're still on the State Street part, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you mentioned how we're going to have the checklist and people are going to visit these restaurants. I was out last night, saw many, many violations. Have there been any warnings issued yet at all after 2 weeks of this new guidelines?
Chair Marsden, I don't know exactly, you know, from a business by business standpoint. I know that as we speak, we have staff who are out there doing the inspections, but I don't know what has taken place as far as notifications after those inspections have been completed. I can get that. I believe that information. It's not all compiled into one nice sheet. I think I believe each business is kind of like on its own sheet with its own checklist. But we're trying to figure out a way to get that compiled so that we can more easily share it with a group like the Access Advisory Committee or somebody else who might be interested. So let me see, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that's something that would be more readily available. But I do know that the inspections are taking place as we speak.
Okay. As you remember, when we met with Suzanne and you and Victor a few weeks ago, I asked if we could get this in to us as a group. We haven't heard anything yet. I liked your new guidelines, which said 6-foot path of travel and straight. Okay. But it's not there. I was up and down last night. There's many, many places where I don't think a totally blind person like Bob could even get through, and he's a great traveler. But if it says 6 feet wide and straight, they're not doing that. Even on Victoria Street, some of those Oleo Limoni and stuff, the side, I think Bob might mention that, but the side sidewalks totally blocked. I just saw it last night, but I don't see much improvement so far, and I wish we could know who's getting warned and how quickly the city attorneys get involved. So thank you for that. Please update us as soon as you can.
Sure.
Any other questions for Brian on the State Street and the parklet dining? Bob, did you want to mention a few of the problems that you had?
Well, you know what? I think to save time, I'm just gonna need. I was downtown the other day, and I could make a list and present it, but I don't want to waste the committee's time right now because there are several spots that need attention. 700 block on the east side, the 1000 block. I mean, I could probably think of 4 or 5 right off the bat, and I haven't even walked the whole stretch from Sola down to Haley. So I'd rather come up with a list and
okay, that'd be good. making sense,
Jim,
Brian.
this is Barbara. I think we need an ad hoc committee to follow up so that we don't wait from quarter to quarter for follow up on these things. I think we need a group that can be active on the spot to follow up with Brian.
Well, I think we have that committee now, which was Suzanne and Sean and myself, but we haven't been able to get much coordination with the city. We ask for certain things and we don't get them. So
I think we need to be asking with deadlines.
okay,
I think we're not taken very seriously here.
well, you're correct there. Brian, can you consider those concerns and maybe get back to me offline and say how we can actually get some kind of true dialogue from this ad hoc committee to the city? It's one thing to promise. It's one thing to promise that we're going to do warnings and then have some kind of penalty, but nothing's happening. And it's been 6 months, and I don't want to be a jerk here, but you know, the ADA says that if you have a temporary event, which should be a one-day event at some city park or something, it has to be fully accessible. That's in the ADA laws. 1 day, fully accessible. We now have 5 months not accessible still. That's totally against what the ADA calls for. And I don't know if the city understands that, but every temporary event has to be fully accessible. And 5 months is a long time. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Brian on this? Okay, we'll go to item 7 now, which is the ADA coordinators report.
Okay, thank you once again, Chair Marston. The ADA coordinators report, this will be pretty brief this time around. One thing I did want to mention just quickly, I attended last month, there's this California network of ADA coordinators, and somehow I got on their email list and jumped on their monthly phone call. It was a Zoom call, and it was pretty interesting. We ended up talking a lot about parklets and on-street dining and guidelines, and I ended up sharing the city's guidelines with them, which a lot of the members found to be very helpful. So I think as long as it took to get those guidelines developed, I think we're still kind of ahead of the curve compared to some other agencies. So I was happy to share that, and hopefully they were able to put that to use for their own agency. So I'll continue to attend those. I think that's a great forum to bring issues up and hear what other people, what other ADA coordinators or people in similar roles are doing in other agencies. There was one person on the line, I believe she was from the city of LA, and she's dedicated to that for the city of LA. That's all she does. So certainly a great resource, and I'll continue to tap into that. Let's see, a couple of other quick things. Just wanted to mention the minutes for this meeting. That's been something that it takes Sarita King a long time, and prior to her, I think it was Kim. We've had others, but they'll go through, they basically watch and listen to the meeting and try to, they're not transcribing the entire thing, but if you look at the meeting minutes that were just approved, it's nearly 6 pages long, and it takes a long time to compile that, which, I mean, it's nice to have it in the detail that it is, but now that we have the technology and meetings are being recorded, we're trying to transition these minutes to be more like, if you look at the council minutes, it's more focused on the action item. And when I spoke to Sarita King this week about trying to make this transition, I said, well, you know, it would be great if we could do this, but then have, when you go in the minutes, have a link that when you click on it, it takes you right to the audio, or I think these are now YouTube videos, but it takes you right to the recording of the meeting to that point in the agenda. So you don't have to hunt around and try to find where item number 12 was on the agenda. That can take a while. So we're gonna aim to do that starting with the minutes from this meeting today. So you'll see that come out in draft. It'll be quicker to get a draft out. And I think taking advantage of the technology with the recording, that seems to be the best use of staff resources. We don't need to, like I was saying, we don't need to transcribe something that's already in the record via the...
Brian, excuse me, I want to say this is very exciting. And the long history of our problem with minutes for this group was that we were finding editorial comments inserted into our minutes that had nothing to do with what actually transpired. So that's the long history. And for those of us who are visually challenged, yes, it has been such a pain to try and deal with what's going on, and having an audio at least gave us an accurate representation of what took place in our meeting. So this is very exciting, and it was one of my projects in joining this committee was to get functional minutes. So thank you very, very much. As I take leave of this committee, that's very exciting. Thanks.
Okay, and then the last thing that I was going to mention is just, you know, here we are in November. We've been talking about vacancies and applications for new members or for members to continue on. The next time we meet, we will have new committee members installed. That'll be in the early part of the agenda. And in addition to that, the first meeting in the calendar year is when we normally have the nominations and the installation of a new, if it ends up being a new chair and vice chair. So one thing that I'm thinking about doing is reaching out to all of the committee members who will be part of that January meeting and finding out who might be interested in any one of those positions. And that can be kind of put on the table when that agenda item comes up to make the motion to appoint the new chair and vice chair. So look for that in our next meeting, which is right around the corner. And I think really that's it on the ADA coordinators report. We still have a bunch left on this agenda. So if there are no further questions, I think we can move on to the next item.
Brian, this is Jim. Just a quick comment. I appreciate what you thought about getting feedback from the new members. We had suggested that to you earlier, so I'm glad you're going to do that. And I want to say I'm happy to hear your plans about the minutes, as long as there's a link to each section of the agenda. Many people have said, well, it's on the audio, but very few people from the public are going to go and look at that audio and listen to an hour and a half or 2 hour thing. If you had a link for each item, I have no problem with that. But the minutes, the one thing about them, you can go back 5 years from now and say, hey, we agreed on this and it's not happening. So if you just have the basic facts, but do have the audio links, that would be fine with me. I think that'd be a good idea and save Sarita some time. Any other questions for Brian? Okay, now we have the ad hoc committee reports. The first one will be sidewalk committee. So I'm going to talk real quickly about the update on new curb installations. I got this from Ashley at the sidewalk subcommittee. There was 94 new ramps done under fiscal year 20A and 70 new ramps planned for fiscal year 20B. FY21C will include 31 new ramps, and FY21B will provide 33 new ramps. And we also have a document showing all these ramps if anyone's interested in that. Now for Sarita, she's going to read a Parkway Mitigation that Nick Kuntz was very instrumental in doing. So can you, I think she's going to show some pictures. So Adriana, can you do what? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I will be reading this comment. This is for the Sidewalk Ad Hoc Committee report. The Ad Hoc Committee met on September 28, 2020. We discussed a number of issues, including call button effectiveness, new stands that created access issues in the public right-of-way, access ramps, and barrier removal. A byproduct of the Blue Curb audit 3 years ago was identifying access barriers adjacent to existing on-street blue curb. Jim Dewey has been very helpful in resolving many of these issues. We are working through a prioritizing list and are making good progress. Mr. Dewey reported on 10 such barriers have been removed or improved. See attachments for more details. And then below, I will be showing some images. Arlington Avenue install new blue zones nearest to the southeast corner of Arlington Avenue at State Street. That's this image.
This is Jim. Can I butt in real quick and say these are things that Nick had identified earlier in his GPS program of parking spots that were not accessible. So this is what we call Parkway Mitigation. So go ahead. Do you have the other pictures?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This image has a caption, 309 West Quinto, move handicap sign pole to the front of the handicap zone, extended blue curb towards the driveway. The AAC request to extend blue zone 6 to 7 feet, State Street between Milford Korean and Arriaga. Chair Martin, would you like me to continue reading them?
It's up to the committee. Do you want to see these? We got 10 of them fixed. Maybe one more.
Jim, when she's done, I have a few comments regarding the Sidewalk Ad Hoc Committee.
Okay. Okay, I guess that'll be enough for the sake of time.
Okay,
but I want to say 10 of these did get fixed recently. So this is an ongoing project. A lot of times you get dropped off and there's a pole in the way. I'm sure Suzanne's aware of this sometime, where there's a big mud puddle at the drop-off point. So this is a good work that we've gotten done. Thank you. Okay, Bob, I know you have some comments to make.
Okay, we had a very productive meeting back on the 28th September. Several pending items. I am still investigating the signals up at State and Alamar to see how user-friendly they are. We found out that the hitching posts that are in various locations around the city are historical landmarks and cannot be removed or tampered with. Jim Dewey and I still have an on-site visit pending at the Amtrak regarding accessible paths of travel out to State Street, along with the sidewalk in front of the new Greyhound, to see how much it is impacted by the bicycle rental shop next door. So those are still some pending items that we are following through on. Plus, excuse me, the status of current and possibly new newsstands around the city, and that some of them have stanchions that are inset from the actual newsstand that create a hazard for cane users. So those are items that are still sort of pending. The last one is we're still working with the city, and I'm waiting to hear an update from Brian. I've heard no movement from MTD. They're not responding so far regarding the necessity for truncated domes around the front of the driveway of the transit center. Right now, they're just very sloping curbings into and out of the driveways, and then up in the front part of the transit center, and it's very difficult to tell where the street ends and the regular sidewalk and then the actual driveway. So hopefully we will get truncated domes installed there. They should have been with the onset of the project. Somehow that was overlooked. So we're still looking for follow through on that.
You, Bob. Brian, I want a clarification. The tactile domes that we've asked for on the public sidewalk, that's not anything to do with MTD at all, right? Should Bob even be talking to MTD about the ones on the public works? Is that just you and your group? Or does MTD have to be involved?
So it's within the city's right of way,
Right.
but the trigger for doing that, in our opinion, was the development activity that took place at the transit center. So we are kind of leaning on MTD to step up and get those installed on the city's right of way. They did a lot of work in the public right of way as part of the project, and that would kind of complete the work that took place there.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So Jim, that's all I had for the sidewalk ad hoc report.
Okay, thank you. Another ad hoc we had is Valet Parking Ad Hoc, and that was Mr. Kuntz, Barbara Silver, and myself. There's been nothing going on for a couple of years. They've kind of dropped off because of State Street closing. So I'm going to say that we disband this ad hoc committee. And Brian, I'm not sure if we have to vote to disband it or whether I can just say we're done. This is a temporary thing. And as ad hocs are supposed to be temporary, I think we're just done with it. So if it's okay, I'm just going to disband that committee for now until they bring it up again. Brian, do you think that's okay without a vote?
I would suggest that you make the recommendation. I think it was formed by a motion of the committee, so to disband it, and like you said, these ad hoc committees are supposed to be limited duration for a specific purpose. So it can come back and we can, we would just re-motion and maybe there would be different people at that point in time, but I think it's best to officially disband that ad hoc committee.
Okay, can I hear a motion to disband the Valet Parking Ad Hoc Committee?
I'll make a motion to disband it. This is Barbara.
Okay, this is Jim. I'll second it. So let's have a roll call vote, please.
Okay, this is a motion to disband the Valet Parking Ad Hoc Committee. Suzanne Tejada?
Aye.
Barbara Silver?
Aye.
Janice Rodriguez?
Aye.
Nick Coons? Sean Gura?
Aye.
Robert Bernhardt?
Aye.
And Chair Marston.
Aye. So that motion passes, and the next ad hoc report would be Blue Curb Parking Ad Hoc Committee. That's Nick Kuntz, Janice Rodriguez, and Suzanne.
I do have another comment from Nick that I would like to pull up.
Okay.
Okay, so for the Blue Curb Parking Ad Hoc Committee report, this ad hoc committee was formed with the hope of furthering an accessible parking zone initiative designed to improve accessible parking in the city. This time last year, Nick presented and proposed a proposed list of goals for said initiatives. The last goal was identified as the most readily achievable and included number of recommended changes to the city's website relating to accessible parking. Thanks to the help of Sarita King, today Nick is happy to say that nearly all of those changes have been made. The one remaining suggested website edit to make to the accessible parking zone application form more prominent will require coordinating with downtown parking. And that is it for now.
Okay. I don't want to drag this out, but I think that Sarita was going to show what happened with the all the work she did on accessible parking. There's a link there. And if you're not familiar with this, we don't need to do it. I thought that maybe she had prepared something here. Okay, in the interest of time, Pebby, perhaps those who are interested can just go to our new webpage and find this, but Sarita did a lot of work getting these different items on our website now. So our website is much better than it used to be. Anything else to add? Okay, yeah. There's his blue curb parking chart. Suzanne, may I suggest that perhaps you take a look at that, and Sean, you're both sometimes use chairs, and maybe you could see if there's anything that you think should be added in the future, but I'd appreciate some feedback on that.
Okay, sure.
All right, thank you.
Jim, one more thing, and that was before Nick said he didn't know who was going to update these and who was going to maintain them. And that seems to me to be a hanging issue here. It's nice to have these now, but they need to be maintained.
Okay. Well, part of the problem was getting Public Works to say, or Downtown Parking to say they'd take this over. Nick did say he would volunteer to do a yearly audit update, but we need to have.
But that's just an audit. That's not the actual ongoing responsibility for maintaining it.
Well, that's true, and that's up to Downtown Parking to maintain, or someone. You can't expect Nick to maintain a city website.
No, but I expect us to keep at this until we get it resolved.
True. So, Brian, I guess we want you to understand that we need to have Downtown Parking involved. I know you're working on this, so I hope you can maybe at the next meeting tell us what's going on with Downtown Parking and this blue curb information. Is that acceptable?
Yes, yes, that's fine. And I think just really quickly, I've set up a meeting to talk to Downtown Parking about the blue curb program. And, to me, there's two elements of it. One is the residential requests and the other piece is in the commercial corridor. And I think we kind of already have a program. I think it needs to get fine tuned for the residential. And then the other piece, the bigger piece, is looking at downtown and coming up with a programmatic approach to that. And it's interesting now with what's happening on State Street, it might merge into the visioning process for the future of State Street, making sure that we have the appropriate amount of accessible parking in the vicinity of that corridor.
And you said you have a meeting planned for that?
Yeah, it's next week. And I think after that, I'd like to convene the ad hoc committee where we can get this ball rolling again.
Would I suggest maybe you tell Nick by email that there is a meeting and see if there's anything specific that he would like you to address?
Sure.
Okay. And just for the sake of the committee's knowledge, on the residential parking, we figured out that there really is no follow through. If a person asks for a spot in front of their house and they are lucky enough to get it, we don't even check to see if that person still needs it or if they've passed away or moved. So we need to have a more robust system of, first of all, getting the parking spots for those who need them, and also making sure they're not still there when they're not needed anymore. So that's a little problem that they have to work on at the city. All right, any other questions on the Blue Curb Committee? Okay, the next ad hoc is on the agenda is the annual report and Access Advisory Committee resolution ad hoc committee. That's Barbara Silver, Nick Kuntz, and Bob Burnham.
Jim, I have a couple comments. I got an email from Brian this last Wednesday saying that he is reviewing the latest committee resolution revisions. And he's scheduled to meet with Paul Casey next week, hopefully to finalize he's got a few edits, minor edits, he says, to do before submitting a final draft to City Council. Hopefully the subcommittee can review those as well before it's submitted to City Council for final approval, but I think we're getting close. Brian, do you have any further comments on that?
No additional comments. That is accurate. I aim to get on the calendar soon. That's the goal. I haven't discussed it yet with city administration or the city administrator's office, but we did have a meeting. It feels like a long time ago now, but with Councilmember Megan Harmon, where we talked about the resolution, and I think there's some support to move this along. So it's just a matter now of discussing some of the details and then picking a date. We were hoping to do this, I think, before the new members were installed, because some of the changes we're looking at involve the length of term.
Right,
but at this point, it's looking like it's probably going to be after the new committee members are installed.
Brian, this is Barbara. Can I request that you send the whole committee the draft before it goes to City Council?
Yes, I think that is something that we can do.
Thank you.
Jim, those are all the comments I had on.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then the next item is website application or replacement. And that's Bob Burnham, Nick Kuntz, and Sean Gurrell.
I have a comment on that if I could lead off.
Sure.
We had a very productive kickoff meeting last Thursday, the 29th of October, a week ago yesterday. I thought it was a really comprehensive presentation. They talked about choosing a vendor. There are 3 meetings coming up that are optional for us on the Access Advisory Committee subcommittee, feeding into this whole process. These are requests for proposal, RFP meetings to basically answer any questions regarding the proposal, which I believe Sally Nagy, who's our meeting coordinator, is heading. Once those are done, then I think we go into a regular timeline of discussing aspects of creating this whole new platform that we will be vigilant about making sure the accessibility elements are included. But I thought it was a very comprehensive meeting, and I look forward to future participation. Sean, did you have anything to add?
No, just that it was nice that they recognize the Access Advisory Council members, and that, yeah, accessibility will be at least on their minds as they develop it.
Good.
Sean, again, I'm sorry about the mix-up on your application. I hope that you can still be on this group. Remember that you don't have to be a member of the committee to be on some kind of advisory to the city. So I would hope that you could still join this group as a non-member.
Which group is that?
That would be the website applications. I mean, Sean's very astute on website stuff.
Right.
So I'd hope that he could do that. I know Nick's going to follow through, but anyway, Nick, Sean, if you can do that, it'd be appreciated. We need your input.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more interested in input from visual and audio impaired, or like people with video, or like like the different types of impairments. Because being a wheelchair user doesn't really affect my like navigation of web pages as much as it would for someone with other. And it's like I can do my best to envision what that would be, but I feel like other types of disabilities, like I do a bunch of like geospatial stuff and mapping, and it's like I can't imagine what that would be like as a person that is visually impaired. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to continue and help and give input, but I think other people's input should be weighted
Okay.
much more heavily.
Well, I agree, but you have good skills on computer stuff, so they can't pull something over on you. It would be good to have someone representing the deaf community, because we have no one doing any kind of assistive language, adaptive language for deaf people. Okay. What time is it now? 10:15. Can we have a 5-minute break? Come back at 10:20.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Talk to you in 5. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. I want to apologize again. I forgot to ask for public comments on the items that we've talked about already. I apologize to those who are trying to make a public comment. So please, if anyone wanted to make a public comment on any of the items we've talked about so far, please, I'm going to let you talk now. So Adriana, could you see if anyone had wanted a public comment?
Mr. Marston, there is no public comment at this time.
Okay, good. Please, Adriana, remind me after each of these items that we have to ask for public comments, okay? I get carried away and forget about that. All right, the next item is the De La Guerra Plaza update.
So I'm not sure there's any introduction, but my name is Brad Hess. I'm the Principal Project Manager for the City of Santa Barbara. And with me today, I have Leif McKay, who is with the RRM Design Group. And just thank you very much for having us. We're excited to give you an update just on where we are with the plaza. I want to give you a little bit of background. I want to and then bring you up to speed on the current status. So again, just a little background. As you probably already know, there's been multiple efforts over the years to try and update this plaza and make it more beautiful. And for multiple reasons, each of these attempts has been thwarted. But the catalyst this time was a little different, and it actually started with the police station. And so as the police station is proposing to go down at the Coda commuter parking lot, which is where the farmers market meets on Saturdays, the need for relocating the farmers market became quite a hot topic. And one of the ideas was to actually put the farmers market in a revitalized plaza. And as things progressed with that idea and with the police station project, currently the farmers market has decided that they do not want to go at the plaza and go on Carrillo Street, but which is a whole nother topic, of course. But what that did is it actually created the desire within the city to, you know what, we really need to make this happen. And so in 2019, the plaza became its own project, its own timeline, not tied to the police station at all. And we are proposing that this project be paid for through the Measure C funds. But my goal as the manager of the project is hopefully to get it paid for by other means, with hopefully a grant for repairing these types of spaces. That is down the road, but one thing over the course of the last couple months, few months, I've really realized is that this is a very, very complicated project. There are lots of voices that need to speak into it, into the design. Lots of input from the public. Each of the issues that we consider have ripple effects and ramifications. And so early on in this, in the development of this, the project, we realized that we're going to have a lot of input from different boards and commissions. And so the idea of an advisory committee was formed at that point, which was made up of multiple members of each of these groups. So we have 2 members of City Council. We have 2 members from the Planning Commission, 2 members from the Parks and Recreation Commission. We have 2 members from the Historic Landmarks Commission. And we have the Executive Director for the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation, and the General Manager at that time for the Farmers Market was invited. And since they're going another direction, he has not been a part of the meetings. But those 9 people have formed a committee that has been incredibly effective and patient and thorough, with the goal of creating a space that is really about the entire community, making it the center of the town again, clearly making it aesthetically beautiful, but making it very functional too. We want to be able to facilitate events and occasions and passive use, and really make it the center of town again. So that is the purpose of the advisory committee. And as such, I believe it was our third meeting. We have had 8 meetings thus far, but I believe it was in our third meeting that we, Rob Dayton led us through the exercise of creating a purpose statement for the plaza. Because if we don't understand why we're doing this, then we really won't get it right. And so just to read the statement, it is De La Guerra Plaza celebrates and honors the historic heart of our city and provides the flexibility to serve our community's diverse social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitality. So out of that, you have these 5 vitalities that clearly come out: the social, cultural, historical, economic, and environmental. And the challenge for this committee is to really process each and every concept and idea that runs through the committee through this filter of these 5 vitalities. And are they meeting that vitality or all of them? Because as you can well imagine, everyone will have an opinion on what is done at this plaza. And so, so that purpose statement has really guided the conversations, has guided our discussions and the concepts. So the next slide is really just a very, again, it's a concept at this point, because that's where we are. The challenge of the advisory committee is to come up with a concept plan that will then be taken through the development application process like any other project. So it'll start over, if you will, at the beginning with the city, but with a concept that has been vetted thoroughly by this committee. So I want to show you, we want to describe this, this plan to you. And I want to orient you so that we are all working off of the same mental image. What you see on the screen is a shot, a plan view where State Street is at the bottom and Anacapa Street would be at the top. And De La Guerra Street is to your left and the News Press would be to your right. So as you know, true north in this town is at a 45-degree angle to this plaza. So it's truly, you know, northeast. But for purposes of this discussion, I'd just like to reference De La Guerra Street as being north, just so that you can all know what we're talking about. And so that when we reference the north side, we're really referencing De La Guerra Street toward Casa de la Guerra. So you have 4 primary buildings surrounding this plaza. You've got a street that runs in this, again, east-west as a thoroughfare. But you have State Street that's closed currently. And you have ideas and concepts for that State Street staying closed. So things have sort of developed over the last 6 to 8 months in that we've, there are a couple, I guess, baseline design parameters that we've decided on. The first is that as we look at this plaza and try and imagine what we want it to be, it was unanimous for the committee that this be a pedestrian-only space and that the entire level of the plaza be brought up to curb level. So from building to building throughout the plaza, it would be one level surface. And it will also include De La Guerra Street between Anacapa and State Street. That too will come all the way up to curb level. And so there'll be no distinction in terms of elevation between the street and the curb. All of that material will change. So visually, you're going to have a completely different look and feel as you come into the space, but just culturally, you're going to have a different feel for the space. The right-of-way will not go away. So that will continue. to exist. It won't be used necessarily as a right-of-way, but it will exist. So the plan at this point is to act as if State Street will not open again. So the space between State Street and Casa de la Guerra will very much function like the rest of the plaza in that it will be pedestrian only. Between Casa de la Guerra and Anacapa Street, however, we will need to provide some parking for the businesses in the area for loading, unloading, 15-minute zone type of parking for City Hall. And that will be based on a demand analysis that we unfortunately have not been able to do because we were just on the cusp of starting that study when the quarantine hit. So trying to figure out what a normal traffic pattern would be or a normal parking demand is virtually impossible at this point. So we've sort of tabled that that area, if you will, for what type of parking we will need, but aesthetically it will also match what we have going on at the rest of the plaza. So going back to the surface material. So as I said, it's going to all be level, but right now we're exploring what types of materials we need to use at this plaza and want to use at this plaza. As it is in the El Pueblo Viejo, the EPV zone, there are specific guidelines that we need to pay attention to and follow. But our governing board is the Historic Landmarks Commission, which has, of course, their own latitude as to what they can approve and what they can't approve. But there are a couple driving factors on the materials. One is there are a lot of utilities in this plaza. And one of the reasons that it looks so horrible is because over the years, those utilities have had to be repaired. And so you dig in, you do your repair, and then you try and repair it back to what it used to look like. But it's impossible to match concrete to concrete. So you've got different colors going on, different patterns going on. And it's pretty ugly, quite frankly. So what we want to do is create a utility plan that makes a lot more sense, one, for the plaza and for the surrounding businesses, but two, to put the materials over those utilities that can be brought up so you can do the repairs and then they can be put back without it looking like the repair was done. So it's quite a tall order. The second driver in that is that it needs to be compliant with ADA. It needs to be smooth. It needs to be free from tripping hazards, and the slip coefficients need to be perfect. So there's a lot of attention being paid right now to the materials that we're looking at, all the while trying to incorporate this, the aesthetics of those materials into a historic setting, because you've got Casa de la Guerra at the north, you have City Hall to the east, you have the News Press building to the south, and then you have the La Placita building, or the booth building, to the west. And so how do you incorporate aesthetically a plaza that wants to look like the 1920s, but you're building it in the 2020s? So it's certainly a challenge. The second thing I want to speak about is just the perimeter. I already mentioned the landmarks, but one of the things that this plaza really needs is the ability to soften up the hardscape. And so there's going to be landscaping. There's going to be, we're talking about doing tree wells for trees where you can sit and enjoy the atmosphere, and the trees eventually will grow up into providing wonderful shade and seating spaces along the perimeter. The interior of that courtyard we want to keep as open as possible, because that's where the events will happen. That's where the activity will happen as well. So again, a challenge of how do you create a large open space that facilitates activity while at the same time softening it. Seating was brought up previously relating to State Street, and that's another issue that we want to make sure that we accommodate so that people have a place to sit and relax. But we also need to make sure that we're not welcoming those that like to sleep in the plaza currently. If they take over the seating, it makes it certainly challenging. So it's a balance within all of that as well. We will also be introducing some new features into the plaza to bring people there, but also accommodate some needs. So there's a larger circle that's represented in the plan, sort of as a focal point toward the news press side of things. And the concept at this point is to bring in a splash pad that will have the little fountains that spurt water up and down. Wonderful for especially for the summer that we had this year. It would have been a great attraction for families and really anyone who wants to cool off and walk around. But it's also incredibly beautiful and entertaining. We will be bringing in public restrooms in Stork Placita. Those will be self-cleaning restrooms so that we don't have to worry about the maintenance headache that we currently have in many of our public restrooms. The lighting is being analyzed right now such that it's going to be safe, but it's also going to provide different options for ambiance, whether it needs to be really bright for an event or just enough for safety and for pedestrians walking through. Another feature is going to be what we call an arcade. And City Hall, if you picture this in your mind's eye, the City Hall is the side that's facing the plaza has arches. And the side that is along De La Guerra Street also has arches. So we're proposing, and this has been a design feature that is unanimous from the committee, to put in a new arcade between City Hall and the News Press building on the east side of the plaza. It will be oriented to match what is a historic adobe wall that stems off of the City Hall building. And that's to also harken back to the pueblos that were there where City Hall's parking lot is. So it'll be at a slightly different angle than City Hall. It won't face the plaza at a 90 degree. But what it will do is it will provide a great enclosure on that side of the plaza, which feels very open and inadequate, I guess you could say, on that side of the plaza, because all you see is a parking lot. So what this will do is provide a beautiful enclosure on that side without blocking any of the mountain views. It'll provide a space for sitting and for shade. It will also provide a stage, smaller stage for, say, smaller acoustic events or entertainment. It will also allow, and this is one of the exciting parts for Fiesta and Old Spanish Days, it will also provide them the opportunity to reorient Fiesta by 90 degrees so that instead of a long, narrow audience space, what you're going to have is a very wide, open audience space. And they're incredibly excited about this opportunity because it will give them that stage presence right there with a mountain view backdrop. You still have these beautiful buildings surrounding it, but with the added lighting, with the reorientation, it's going to feel so much more open rather than a crammed space that sometimes it feels when those events are very popular. So that arcade is a wonderful new feature that is going to, I think, really add a lot of character and light to the space. The last thing I want to mention is that we've been tapping into different resources, of course, as mentioned with the advisory committee alone. Excuse me, but we've also worked, we touched base with the Braille Institute and have a great relationship with one of their orientation specialists. And so after this next meeting, where we talk a little bit more about materials and we get a little bit more guidance from the advisory committee, we'll be bringing in that orientation specialist to begin working through some of the concepts that we need to pay attention to as people walk around in the mobilization, some of the things that we don't necessarily pay attention to, this orientation specialist certainly will. As for what we are, in addition to this report, we were asking ourselves yesterday, what do we want from this committee? And I think really two questions come up. One is above and beyond just the ADA requirements that we have been paying attention to from day one. What are some of the things that you've experienced that we need to include or consider that would really enhance your experience in this space? And the second part of that question, the second question really, which is a part of that, is what are some of those small things that make a big difference to you, especially in an open space, an open public space that we need to pay attention to? So I hope that I provided you with a verbal visual of what we're proposing at this point. Would love to hear your comments and feedback for us, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. So,
Brad, this is Bob Burnham. Thank you. Very comprehensive presentation. Sounds like a really cool project. I have several questions. Well, first of all, I have a request that as a member of the Access Advisory Committee who is visually impaired, I would like to be included in the meetings with the orientation mobility specialist from Braille Institute. Because in the past, in looking at projects and truncated dome implementation and things like that, things have been overlooked. So okay. I would like to be included in those meetings. Secondly, I had a question regarding the uniform surface. I'm sure you have, but I just wanted to verify that there are mitigating things in the project that allow for proper drainage as far as, when it rains, with a uniform surface, where's the water going to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. And before you keep going, let me just quickly answer it, which is there is zero percolation in this soil below the plaza. There's 22 feet of clay. So the water is not going to go into the soil. So any type of permeable pavers would only be for aesthetics. They will not be for the purpose of draining. The water naturally is going to go toward the news press because that's just what gravity does. So part of this is to direct that water there. We're hoping for some cisterns to be able to capture that water before it goes into the storm drain. So okay. That's the plan at this point.
Good. And the last thing I wanted to mention is for me and maybe some other members, one of the things that's overlooked is the problem with obstructions. Right now, there are old signposts and things. Some of them seem to be quite inset from the curbings along the sidewalk, especially along the back of the buildings that front State Street, that the south side of the plaza there, as you walk along behind those buildings toward the historic Placita and that area. Just wondering how that whole space is going to be utilized, and whatever aesthetic things are installed, hopefully they will be cane friendly and just maybe a lack of obstructions as far as signposts and things that stick out, that impede the path, a really clear path of travel. So that would be my last concern.
Okay, those are great. That's great input, because we are going to be removing a lot of those signs because there won't be any vehicles in there. So some of those, that's one of the things. But we will absolutely be paying attention to any obstructions that and creating that clear path, because while you have a wide open center on the perimeter, that's where a lot of people are going to end up walking. So thank you. Yeah, we will definitely pay attention to that.
Thank you very much. Otherwise, thank you. A very comprehensive presentation.
Good, and you're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Brad on this? Well, while you're thinking, I have a few. Brad, thank you for that good presentation. I was very impressed that you actually took time to orient everybody to this map because it's not your typical north up map. And I just think you really had some insight on what it's like to be visually impaired or not to be an architect. So thank you for getting us oriented in the correct area. A few questions. I see over by De La Guerra Plaza, or the Casa de la Guerra, there's a curved item right in front of the plaza, and I don't know where that goes or what is that curved. It looks like a street almost. What is that curve in front of the Casa?
Chair Marston, it's a great question. It can be confusing if you think of it just as it's an architectural feature that is just, if you were to orient this entire plan 90 degrees,
Sure.
what it would do is it would feel like a bookend for the news press when you look at the curve on the other end.
Okay.
So it's just an architectural feature. It will be inlaid into the surface of the ground, but it's not going to appear as if it's a roadway. But
Okay.
again, that feature won't be confusing because there won't be cars. So it's going to end up being, and this is just, again, just a pencil sketch. We've further developed this, but it won't be confusing at the end of the day.
Okay. Because you're raising De La Guerra Street up to the curb level, right?
That is correct.
So is this these two curves, the outside and inside, is that just decorative, like a different tile color? Or
Correct.
is that actually, okay, there's no curb there at all, right?
Correct.
So it's just mimicking the big splash curve at the other end, is that right?
It is, because this plaza just wants to be really linear. You've got,
yes.
north, south, east, west. You've got the cross sections. Everything, the connectivity is all linear. So bringing a curve into that really softens that space for the
Okay, I got you there. Something else that has been brought up to us before, when they close off De La Guerra Street for events, we've had comments from different people who use wheelchairs that they couldn't park any place nearby. My suggestion, or what I'll bring up to you, is there any way to get a pathway past news press down to the next street where the public garage is without them having to go out all the way to Anacapa Street? Am I making sense? Right to the, okay. Is there any way to get somehow blue curb parking in the garages as close as you can to the plaza for those who need to go to events?
So event parking is going to be a little different than your normal parking. We will have ADA spaces available for anyone who needs to go to this area for either City Hall or the close by businesses. So that will be close by.
Where will those be? I'm sorry.
Well, that hasn't been completely decided.
Okay.
So that's part of the challenge is we're not really sure. We're not really sure if we need to change the City Hall parking lot a little bit to accommodate that, or if we put them closer to Anacapa Street on De La Guerra Street. But what you're also asking is, as far as event parking, is where, if it's a smaller event that isn't necessarily this huge thing, what's the best path to Lot 10, which is the Ortega lot?
Right.
So you're asking for a path, or could there be a path through the news press down to Ortega Street? I don't want to even come close to having it appear that I could promise that.
Okay.
I don't know. Asking Wendy McCaw of that would be down the road a little bit.
Okay.
It depends on what they end up doing with their parking lot and with their building, as to whether or not that's a path that could be considered public. But right now, it would be just a wheelchair path through a parking lot, which I'm not sure is necessarily safer than the additional effort getting over to either Anacapa or State Street.
And also the problem with that is you would then have to cross Ortega Street in mid-block with your wheelchair. So that maybe is not a good idea. I just hope you can get some good blue curb parking close by, because we've had those comments before.
Okay, thanks for that.
And then this is totally off the subject of this plaza, but you mentioned the farmers market doesn't want to be here anymore. My thought was always that the Saturday farmers market was not on State Street because of all the tourists and the traffic. They didn't want to block off State Street on a weekend. Now that we have State Street closed, is there any reason why farmers market can't be the same place it is on Tuesdays? Because you're not now blocking off State Street.
Yeah,
Why do they want a different place?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really comes down to volume. The Tuesday market takes up two blocks.
Right.
And it's single-sided.
Right.
The equivalent of the Saturday market would be 6 blocks.
Whoa.
Really?
But no one really wants to walk 6 blocks for their fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
So what the serpentine pattern in the Saturday market is really what they were after.
Okay.
For a replacement location. And so the plaza, in my view, certainly would accommodate that. But they have their own reasons for really wanting to go on Carrillo Street, and it's Carrillo between Chapala and Anacapa. So it's those 2 full blocks of Carrillo, where, as you know, it's 4 lanes plus.
Yeah.
So they're going to have the equivalent space in those 2 blocks, as well as up and down State Street for a block. And so, I hope that works out for them. Right now, they have a proposal in with the city. There's some physical changes that need to happen in the surrounding area to make that happen. But my understanding is they are excited about that location, and I think it'll work really well for them.
Wow, that would really block a lot of traffic, though, wouldn't it?
It would for those 2 blocks. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that information. Yeah.
So I still would love to hear some additional, I guess, feedback. From Mr. Burnham, we heard, obstructions, and to remove those and to certainly don't introduce those. But if I could just ask, maybe not now, but if you think through an open space like this, where you're going to have a level surface, where you're going to have a lot of different directions in which you could go, we would really love to hear your input and feedback as to the things that we need to pay attention to, that again aren't part of the ADA plan, that aren't just the requirements. It's the little stuff. It's the things that make a big difference. It's not introducing things at 5 feet high so that you don't bonk your head because you can't see it. It's things that there are the intangibles that we don't know about that you do. So we would love to have this input continue. It doesn't just have to happen.
Brad, if I could suggest this, Bob Burnham. I know years ago they had a library improvement project, and we had a couple of workshops where we got together and discussed all the variations of what the library and the art museum wanted to do with that space in between. I don't know where that's at right now, but segueing that over to the De La Guerra Plaza project, are you going to be having open workshops to go through this design process to get input from various entities in the city, plus those of us maybe representing the Access Advisory Committee?
That's a great question. Again, as I mentioned early on, this is just the concept that gets then put into the city process. So I believe part of that city process, we will want that public input based on a concept, not so that we could change the concept, but rather how do you make that concept better? So yes, I think a workshop or 2 or 3 or whatever it takes to make sure that we have those intangibles included, I think would be excellent. If we can do it in advance, that's great. But yes, we will make sure to have that a part of the process.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions or no other feedback, this concludes our item, and we really appreciate your time. Thanks for hearing us out. Thanks for your questions. Those were excellent.
I'm sorry, I had myself muted. So can I ask a question again?
Of course.
Okay. When I watched the AIA presentation, I'm pretty sure they were getting rid of the La Placita building or something to open up the plaza so you could see it from State Street.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Suzanne can confirm that or not. Right now, you would have the open De La Guerra, but you really wouldn't see much of this plaza from State Street. Are there plans for AIA to get rid of something to have a visual look at the plaza?
I can speak to, this is Suzanne Tejada. I can speak to that briefly. These were just concept ideas. They're not based in any reality.
Sure.
I think the La Placita building is a historical building that could not be removed. The other buildings possibly to the south of that along State Street might be, we could look at considering opening up some of that to make a better connection to State Street.
Okay.
Once again, the ideas presented in the charrette were ideas, and there would be a lot of things to consider about that, but it might be an interesting point to talk about.
Okay. Brad, I had one idea. If you want to help the visually impaired, it might be good once this is actually built or being built to have someone prepare a tactile map so that the blind and visually impaired would be able to touch and feel these different buildings around the area and what was available in the plaza. Just a side comment, but sometimes a good tactile map really helps people orient to this.
I think that's great. Would it be in, could it potentially be on a stand or at one of the entries, or in multiple entries to the
It
plaza?
could be, yeah. You can make them out of plastic or whatever and have a stand, or you could even have electric kiosks.
Okay.
Or yeah, there's different ways to do it. So it's down the road, but I think a nice tactile map would be wonderful.
Okay, that's great.
Now this is way off the subject, but in my mind, the News Press building is a lot bigger than they need. Their parking lot's a lot bigger than they need. Is there any talk to somehow trying to get Wendy to move or to give up part of that parking lot or the building? I know they don't use it all, so just curious what's going on.
I have been in discussions with them over this last year and a half for sure. And at this point, any of their plans have been kept very tight to their vest.
Yes.
Which I understand. We were speaking to them about a potential use exchange for their parking lot. But since things have changed in terms of our dynamics without the farmers market, those conversations have pretty much stopped at this point. It's a relationship that we're hoping to continue to build. So who knows for the future? I hope it would work out.
My other question has to do with the trees along both edges of the plaza. Now, as this overhead view, of course, we're seeing the top crown of the tree, which looks like you're taking up a lot of space. But of course, on ground level, you're not, right? I mean, from this picture, it looks like the plaza is pretty much the size as it used to be because your trees are taking over where the road was. But I know on the ground, it won't be that way. So what do you kind of have in mind to have where those trees are? Just open areas, or is there going to be stuff between the trees?
So you bring up a great point. We're picturing tree wells that could potentially be circular with seating around them. But you've got also 4 or 5, actually 3 currently, restaurants that open up onto the plaza.
Right.
And our idea is it would be great to have them spill over into the plaza, so that as you're looking from De La Guerra Street down that side toward the News Press, you really get a streetscape view where you've got trees, you've got tables and chairs, you've got umbrellas, you've got a really great atmosphere where you want to go. That would be equal for the evening time as well. So that's how we're visualizing that side of the plaza, which is that it's just activated by people and sitting down, eating, drinking, and being social. Hopefully we can do it by then. The other side would be really providing shade, providing balance and ambiance for, we'll probably have tables and chairs over there, but all of those details need to be worked out, of course.
Okay.
But the idea is to really provide the shade and the atmosphere at the edges of the plaza because that's really where people gravitate toward anyway.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I noticed that Bob, you said Bob could actually meet with your people from Braille, your O&M
Yeah,
instructor.
so I'll make sure that we get an invitation
Okay.
to Bob when we
Okay.
meet
Well,
with them.
in my academic career, I designed a lot of stuff for making cities more accessible for blind people. And I would probably like to join that group too. I've done a lot of stuff with tactile mapping and just accessibility in general for vision impaired. So I'd like to join that little group too.
That would be great.
And I probably you're looking for more feedback on anything, but I don't see anything. Are there public comments on this? Does anyone have anything else to tell Brad about this good design?
Chair Marston, there is no public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Well, if we're done, then I want to thank you very much for this presentation, and please keep us posted. This looks like something interesting to have, especially if you could see it from State Street, or it looks good. And I hope you can do something with News Press. I think that's an underused building and area, and I know she's not easy to talk with, but maybe there's some way to get something going.
Well, hopefully she's listening.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
And okay, Brian, State Streets or Streets Capital Projects.
Good morning. I'll actually be presenting this item.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get a little more light. There we go. All right. Well, good morning. My name is Lori Yanez. I'm the supervising engineer for the Streets Engineering Design Team. And today I'll be giving you a brief update on the Streets Capital projects, what we've completed to date, what we're currently working on, and some of the grant applications that we've submitted this year. And Sarita and I had put together an exhibit of the ramps, probably similar to the one you mentioned, Chair Marston, regarding the ramps completed this year. So later on, I'll be speaking to the pavement projects that have either completed these ramps or will hopefully do so with the next projects. But it'll be up on the screen as I speak through the other projects as well. So our Streets Capital program continues to be very strong, supporting a very heavy workload, even despite the challenges due to COVID during the second half of the fiscal year. The pandemic's substantially impacted city revenues. So in response to that, our pavement project was delayed until FY21, and there was other shifts done throughout the Streets Capital program. But like I said, with that, we still have a very heavy workload and have 34 projects in total with a budget of over 140 million. Out of those projects, 18 are in design, 6 in construction, and 10 projects were recently completed and are in the either mitigation monitoring phase or are completely wrapped up. I'll highlight some of the projects in each of those categories. The first one is our city bridges. So we started a new project in design, the Carpinteria Street Bridge. This bridge is along Sycamore Creek between Soledad and Canada Street, I believe. It's the next bridge replacement in the East Side neighborhood. Currently, we're in the preliminary design and environmental phase. The project will not only replace the structurally deficient bridge, but will also improve accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists. Construction is tentatively anticipated to begin in spring 2024, and this project is primarily funded by the Highway Bridge Program. Under our accessibility and bike improvements projects, we have the East Side Paseos project. This project installs missing sidewalk and curb ramps, as well as creates a bike boulevard along Aliso Street to create a continuous safe passage alternative to Milpas. This project is also in design with construction anticipated next fall. And this project is one of the ATP Active Transportation Program grants and is 100% funded by the grant. Moving on to construction, we have the Las Positas multi-use path. This is also an accessibility and bike improvement project. This project proposes to construct, or is already started construction, so it would entail 2.6 mile long separated path
Laura, let me
for
interrupt.
bicyclists.
Do you have any visuals on these items that you're talking about?
I do not, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I butted in.
We can definitely do that for the next time we do an update on Streets Capital projects. And we can follow up with some exhibits of these as well. So yeah, this project is 2.6 miles long. It'll be a pathway for bicyclists, runners, pedestrians of all ages and abilities along Las Positas and Modoc Road. This project will be in construction for about 18 months, so we don't anticipate completion until January 2022. And this project is also primarily funded by the Active Transportation Program grant. Moving on to pavement maintenance. So currently we have the FY20A and B maintenance project underway. This maintenance project includes both slurry seal and overlay and consists of slurry sealing 32 roadway segments throughout the city, as well as overlaying activities on Anapamu, Bath, Castillo, and Santa Barbara streets. The project includes the construction of 167 ramps. I believe the exhibit here on the screen had 179. There was 12 that were incorrectly added, but yeah, so it's a great number of ramps, 167, along with some sidewalk repairs along these corridors. The total project cost was about $12 million, with half of that going to concrete repairs. This project is funded by Measure C, SB1, and LSTP grant funds. So moving on to some of the grant applications that we've submitted this year, we have submitted our largest ask of the Active Transportation Program grant. To date, we submitted 4 applications totaling over $66 million. Very ambitious, but they're all very great projects and much needed in the community. And we hope that we are successful in at least getting a few of these. They're all huge endeavors if we do get all of them, but we're very excited for the potential of these coming to fruition. So I'll go through those briefly. First one was the Cliff Drive Urban Highway to Complete Street Transformation Project. This project will design and construct a 3.1 mile long multi-use path and 10 crosswalks along Cliff Drive from Arroyo Borough Park to Castillo Street. Next, we have the West Side and Lower West Active Transportation Plan implementation. So this project entails a mile-long Class 4 bike path adjacent to La Cumbre Junior High and the Santa Barbara Community Academy Elementary School, completing a missing gap between Las Positas multi-use path, so what's under construction now, and the neighborhood. The project also entails sidewalk infill on 5 streets to complete safe routes to school, with one of the destinations included being the West Side Community Center. There are also safety enhancements, which include curb extensions, rapid flashing beacons, refuge islands, as well as lighting at 12 neighborhood crosswalks, and pedestrian scale lighting along San Andres, the neighborhood's main street. The third project is the Upper Delavena Gap Closure and Safe Crossings. This project removes one lane on Delavena between Alomar and Padre so that a Class 2 bike lane can be extended through the neighborhood. It also creates Class 3 connections on quiet neighborhood streets that will connect to the new bike lanes on Delavena. There will be curb extensions and high visibility crosswalks installed at 6 project area intersections, including the intersection along the critical walking route to La Cumbre Junior High. And lastly, 210 feet of sidewalk will be installed to close a gap in the sidewalk network along Padre Street. And the last project is the Milpa Street Crosswalk Safety and Sidewalk Widening Project. This project will realign the curbs along the curb line along Milpas to allow major sidewalk widening and repairs and replacement. It'll also construct new tree wells for existing mature trees to flourish. The project installs curb extensions, high visibility crosswalks, additional lighting, and accessibility improvements along the intersections of this corridor. One unsignalized intersection implements a mast arm mounted pedestrian activated flasher, and 2 critical school route intersections adjacent to Milpas will be getting curb extensions in order to increase pedestrian and cyclist visibility. So those are the 4 ATP projects that we've submitted in this round of grant applications, and we anticipate finding out whether any of these will be funded in February 2021. And lastly, the city will be submitting a number of highway safety improvement grants that include sidewalk infill along Calle Real, pedestrian improvements on Delavena, and enhanced pedestrian crossings along State Street and San Andres. Those applications are actually going in next week, and again, we should find out about these around February. So with that, that concludes my update. I know it was a lot of information, and I could definitely provide all of the information provided in a Word document so that you can take a look. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them now or follow up in email.
Thank you very much. So what do you do in your spare time? It looks like you're doing quite a lot. I appreciate all that. A couple quick questions from me. When you say curb extensions, is that the same as a bulb out?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then when you mentioned Milpa Street sidewalk widening, is that both sides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And how much wider will the sidewalks become?
So that we're still in the concept phase, just for the grant application. We put an estimate, I believe it was somewhere between 10 and 12, but I'd have to double check that.
And then you're taking lanes away from Milpas, or how are you getting the area?
No, I believe it's a combination of parking and some restriping.
Okay. And my last question, are you very familiar with the Cannon Perdido and Santa Barbara Street intersection? They seem to be doing a lot of work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
They look like they're going to have some flashing signs. They're putting up new poles for traffic lights. If you know what's going to in there, I'd be glad to know it. But if you don't know offhand, just
yeah, I know there's a few private developments going on, adding to all of the activity, but I don't know exactly what will be the final configuration of the improvements at the intersection, but I can definitely find out. I know those traffic signals are relatively old, as well as the conduit, and was in much need of replacement.
Yes, they've been digging the streets for conduit. They put up some new poles. And if you could just send me what you know about that intersection, I'd appreciate it. Are there any other questions for this great report from Laura? Okay, well, if not, I want to ask you real quick. You said the cliff drive was from Arroyo Burro Beach all the way to Castillo, was it?
That's correct.
Now, I know we've had a lot of problems with safety for this Santa Barbara City College students. And not to give a big explanation, but what are you doing as far as making getting to the school from both directions easy? One of the problems is the bus stops. If you're going from downtown, the bus stops across the street from the entrance to Santa Barbara City College. Do you have anything there to make it more safe for crossing?
Yes, I know we're adding high visibility crosswalks as well as some changes to traffic signal timing, and there's a number of things that we're looking at that we will study further if we were successful in getting the grant.
Okay, and this is a bike path 2 along this 3-point-something miles? I forget, what was you proposing on that cliff drive?
It's 3.1 miles long, and it's a a multi-use path.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Well, I thank you for a very good report, and thank you for staying with us.
No problem, thank you.
Laura, I did have a question. Sorry, I was muted. The pathway along Cliff Drive, does this include any sidewalk improvements, particularly around Cliff and Meigs? I noticed on the east side of Cliff, I guess would be the mountain side of Cliff Drive. The sidewalk heading south from Meigs toward downtown is really quite a mess. I'm wondering if that's included in the project for sidewalk improvement there.
Yes, I believe it is. It's part of removal and replacement with the multi-use path.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to close by saying thank you to Janice and Barbara for staying with us even though your term had expired. You said you'd stay until there's some replacements. There seems to be enough applicants now, if they show up, that you don't have to stay any longer, but I thank you both for having stayed with us. And also to Sean, again, I'm so sorry that this was confusing and you didn't get to apply. Please keep track. We could use your help. And as soon as there's an opening, I hope you apply again. But thank you, Sean, for your time too. And I hope that we can send out a letter of commendation or a plaque or something, not a plaque, but a letter to those people who aren't coming back. Thank you, everybody.
Well, excuse me, Sean, if your position isn't filled, just like for Janice and me, our positions weren't filled. If your position isn't filled, are you willing to continue on until it is filled?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, well, there's hope for that then. Get out there and put some traps in the way of other people. All right. Thank you, everybody. If there's no other, are there any other comments?
Chair Marston, I would just like to note that there was no public comment for item 11.
Thank you for bringing that up again. Why do I always forget?
Jim, I believe our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, February 12th of 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
And Jim, thank you for another year chairing this committee.
Yes.
Well, you're quite welcome. I think we're getting some things done here. I've been very happy with the progress, I think. So hopefully we'll have an even better year next time. And thank you to Brian for all your help.
Absolutely.
And Sarita and Adriana. It's okay. Thanks, everybody. If there's no other comments, I'm going to say we're adjourned.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.